Hi everyone, I'm Ankita from NASSCOM's Product Council, back with another interesting episode from the Data Science Series 2. Today I have with me Prathamesh Karmalkar, Principal Data Scientist, Text Analytics, NLP, NLU, and AI at Merck Life Science India. And he will share his thoughts on adoption of natural language processing in healthcare and life sciences industries, a perspective on next gen of industry. I'm sure this would be a super session to attend and learn how NLP should happen in regulatory environment. The session's flow will be 40 to 45 minutes of presentation followed by the Q&A round. You can ask questions anytime during the session. Prathamesh will try to answer most of them, keeping the session's duration in mind after his presentation. Also, let me know your feedback about today's session will definitely help me in improving my upcoming webinars. Welcome, Prathamesh, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Ankita, for the introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, folks who are joining from across the globe. This is Prathamesh, and for next 40-45 minutes, let's just walk through and understand how the adoption of natural language processing and some of the niche technologies in the market, which are like artificial intelligence, deep learning, machine learning, how they are getting adopted in a highly regulated environment of healthcare and life sciences industry. So this is basically a perspective into how the next generation of pharma industry should be, how they should be pursued, and as a data scientist or as an NLP researcher or as a machine learning researcher, you should understand the fact that how these organizations work, what are the certain barriers, but how those barriers can help you in getting your solution into production or into the real world, which will help nothing but save certain patient life or some human life, because ultimately this industry is more closer to saving a human life. So with this, let's jump into the actual presentation. So for next 40-45 minutes, let's just walk through understanding how the market is for the natural language processing, not just for pharma, but across the globe. I mean, for manufacturing, for supply chain, for banking, the financial services, etc. So how the market stands. Then let's understand and get one step closer to how the market is or how the market is growing for NLP in healthcare and life science. When I say market, it's basically how the adoption is increasing and how we can quantify them into a dollar value. So it's basically like how the savings can be achieved using these technologies, or how the impact can be given to the patients through these technologies. Then, of course, we have to understand the challenges, because ultimately, as I said earlier, this is a highly regulated environment. So we cannot just go and say that, okay, here is my solution. It has worked well in the public environment, like using a very publicly available data set, and how you can implement that. But before that, you have to take a step back and understand what are the challenges and how you have to educate the business person or the enthusiast who wants to integrate or include the natural language processing or text analytics like technologies into their business or into their domains. With this, there is a very strong but yet important compliance which comes into picture when you're trying to integrate, implement, or bring in the technologies like natural language processing or artificial intelligence. That is called FDA. We'll get to know how the FDA plays a crucial role. FDA is not a roadblocker, because typically when people hear about FDA or regulatory, they get scared. They don't want to get into a space where they are challenged by FDA, or they are kind of asked some questions by the FDA. But here we'll understand FDA is not a fear factor. It's kind of like a helping hand. So that's how we have to understand, and we have to educate them as well about these technologies. Then finally we'll get into our perspective. So from the other half of the presentation, I'll just walk you through how we see these technologies and how we try to bring in these technologies into our organization. So we'll spend, of course, I think today's buzz is all around deep learning. So we have to understand what is deep learning, but at the same time, how that is kind of how that needs to be integrated, or how that needs to be brought into the pharma industry, because there are certain challenges which you may not be aware. So let's just understand them and probably probably let's just look at the use cases that we have solved, or our approaches that we have used using specific businesses, but also the also the current or the recent challenge of COVID-19. So I'll give you a glimpse of how we have used technologies of NLP, text analytics, and deep learning to kind of solve a data challenge or an advanced analytics challenge for the COVID-19 literature. And finally, since we are talking into a product environment, so everyone wants to understand how I can build a particular product, how I can ensure that my product is adopted. So as a researcher or as an industry person, let's just discuss how you can enable that adoption roadmap, because it's not just that you take your solution and you kind of try to sell your entire solution, but it's kind of like a stepwise approach which you have to take. And finally, let's just see how NLP evolves and how the future for NLP lies. With this, let's just get into the details. So as you see on this slide, basically this is showing a graph of growth for natural language processing globally. So this is basically kind of published and studied by a renowned organization, and there they have projected that by 2023 across the globe, the market for natural language processing will be close to $25 billion. So if you imagine this market, this is growing at a rate of 24%. So we are sitting at of 2020. Now, if you see this particular image or this particular bar, we are close to $15 billion. Okay, 15 billion USD. So the growth at which the NLP is going is quite huge and vast, because the challenge is that there are a lot of products, there are a lot of technologies which are available for structured data. But if you look at current scenario, some of the big companies like Gartner, IBM, or even NASSCOM in one of their presentations or one of their conferences, they have kind of predicted that the current market for NLP is close to $15-20 billion, because the 80% of the data is unstructured. That is the reason that the market has a very high potential and it has an ability to grow at a faster pace. So that's the reason a lot of researchers or a lot of even product companies wants to understand and get solving some of the complex challenges using the unstructured data. So this is basically in a nutshell talking about how the market will grow globally, not just for the pharma, but across the industries. It can be banking, financial services, it can be insurance, it can be anything. It can be a regulated environment or it can be non-regulated environment also. But in a nutshell, you see this tremendous amount of growth for one such technology. Now, moving from global to very specific scenario of pharma, how the current market stands for healthcare and life science industry. So if you look at that particular scenario, 2016, when this
Hi, Prathamesh. Sorry to interrupt. Can't hear your voice. Yeah, now it's there.
Okay.
Yeah, now you're audible. Just for about 30 seconds, you weren't.
Sure. So as we see, currently the predictions stand at close to $6.25 billion by 2025. And they tend to change. I mean, they will not be static, they will not be steady, but they will eventually grow. So the point that we should take away from this particular slide is that there is a potential market, there is a potential growth for this particular technology. And if you are in the right spot, if you want to understand how this works, I think now is the time where you should plan to study these technologies, learn these technologies, and get into an industry like healthcare or a life science, so that it is going to impact the human life. So that's how we foresee this growth rate or this market for NLP, not from a numbers or from a money perspective, but how can you help the organization in savings and also impacting the human life or the patient life that is delivered by the organization. So in a nutshell, it's growing at a rate of 22%. So globally, it is growing at a rate of 24%, but in pharma, it's kind of growing at 22%, because there is a reason, because this is a highly regulated organization, or this is a highly regulated industry. Not just about our organization. If you take example of any other global organizations. I think they also want to kind of take or implement or adopt these technologies of NLP or artificial intelligence, but they kind of get a roadblock, or they kind of get a stoppage. And what is that stoppage? I think we'll get to know in the subsequent slides. Okay, so still you have 22% of the people who are adopting it. From where they are coming? So one of the leader or countries or the continents from where the major initiatives are taken in NLP for pharma is basically Europe and North America. So if you see the organizations within Europe, like our example, like our organization, Merck Group, or if you look at any other larger organizations, I don't want to take names, but you'll certainly get to know. But so fundamentally, they are kind of leaders. They are not the they are kind of taking initial steps to kind of adopt these technologies in such a way that they can help them in the near future. So European companies or Northern American companies are kind of leaders in taking the major initiatives to implement NLP in a pharma scenario. There are n number of businesses where this can be implemented, but at a high level, in a nutshell, these are the two you can say continents or regions who are leaders in early adoption of the NLP. What are the challenges? I think this is a very crucial point where we kind of have to understand what are the industry challenges. The reason is because unless you understand these challenges, you will not be able to kind of ensure that those nuances or those challenges are solved when you are implementing a solution using, it can be natural language processing, it can be machine learning, it can be deep learning. But fundamentally, these challenges basically kind of come as a drawback when you're trying to showcase your research or trying to say that, okay, I have solved this problem. But when you solve that problem, there are some challenges which you have to see, because you always kind of look at the data from a public perspective, the data which is available. But when you look at it from an industry perspective, I think there are far more important challenges or the problems that you foresee. So let's try to understand them one by one. First and foremost, as I said earlier, currently 80% of the data that is present is unstructured. So there is an exponential growth of unstructured text in every form. If you take an example of clinical trials, if you take an example of literature articles, if you take an example of studies, if you take an example of efficacy documents, if you take example of safety documents, medical, regulatory, blah, 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 so on. So there are n number of documents which kind of get generated in a pharma organization, because there are regulations, and for every regulation you need a supporting document. So for that supporting document, you have to write a text. So ultimately your source of information itself is getting generated automatically. You don't have to go out and look for information. So the industry itself is a source of information who is generating the information on a quite exponential basis. So that is one of the industry challenge, that the data is growing at an exponential rate, but the research which can be implemented on this data is quite a bit slow. Let's see how. But the first major challenge is that within the industry there is an exponential growth of the unstructured data. Now, if you look at second challenge, the second challenge is fundamentally around the variety of data: clinical data, medical data, regulatory data, etc. The reason is because when you are doing a clinical trial, you have to go through the phases of clinical trial. You must have heard about these terms during the COVID challenge, because I think on a daily basis we hear about that this organization or this industry is kind of at a third phase of the vaccine, or third phase of the drug. Similarly, for the other drugs, I think there are stages. So when the drug is kind of given to the patients, before that you have to do a thorough clinical trial. So you have to do a clinical trial on a specific subpopulation. It can be a population of Indians, or it can be a population of Asians. It can be anything. So there are a lot of different types of clinical trials which are performed, and those trials happen in every phases. And for each phase, you have a set of documents which help you understand what went wrong or what can be done better. Okay, so that is something, that is one source of information. Second source of information is medical. Now, if I take an example of medical, let's say you are let's take a scenario of a country like United States. In United States, you are your medical care is covered under an insurance. So as a consumer of the drug, I can kind of reach out to the drug company asking availability of the drug, asking the price of the drug, or giving a complaint about the drug, or giving a compliment about the drug. It's not typically observed in India, but in countries like US or other regions, you have seen that data. So that data is kind of basically understanding what consumers are talking about, what inquiries they are kind of what kind of inquiries are coming to us. So that is fundamentally the second part. The third part in the medical space is basically about physicians. So you have a physician, and physician may request for information. It can be about the efficacy of the drug. When you talk about the efficacy, it means how well the drug is behaving for a particular indication. When you see indication, it's like a disease. If I take a very simple example, take example of fever, normal body fever, or the viral. For viral, we know that the physicians or a doctor would prescribe a drug like Crocin or NICE or something similar. So the indication is known that this drug is basically given to cure the fever. Now, in how much time will it cure, that depends on the combinations of the active ingredients which are used within the drug. But that kind of information can also be requested by the physicians. On the other hand, physicians may ask about the safety of the drug. Physician may ask about certain study which has been performed on a certain subpopulation, or the real world evidence, or it can be anything, or it can be a study related to a certain group of people. So that varies. So these kind of permutation combinations come into the medical side. So basically you have consumers who are asking, you have physicians who are asking, and they ask a lot of different questions and queries. Finally, I mean, not finally, but at a high level, regulatory is something which is very important. In our space, it's called GXP, good practice. So it can be anything, good manufacturing practice, good laboratory practice, good clinical practice, anything. So regulatory is something that where you have to report a certain incident or report certain parameter or certain value back to the authorities. It can be FDA for US or India. It can be European Medicals Association for European countries. It can be anything. But the idea here is that you have to report back certain information to the Food and Drug Authority. So if I take an example here, so let's say, for example, you have a data where you had prescribed a particular drug to a patient, and the patient was observed with something unknown. Okay, so in a drug, again I'll take the example of fever for the simplicity. So in case of fever, basically what happens is you know the side effect that you will feel dizzy, because after taking the drug you'll feel, okay, I need to sleep, because that's how I'll get the rest and I'll be basically getting better. So dizziness or getting dizzy or feeling sleepy after taking that fever drug is known side effect of that drug. But what if, let's say, a patient is observed with a rash, or let's say a patient is observed with abdominal pain, or let's say a stomach pain, or the patient is observed with a headache. That is something that is unknown after taking a drug. So that is called the side effect of the drug. And in that case, what happens is there can be a report. A report might say that I'm just trying to make up and give you an example. So basically a report or a side effect report may say that a 45-year-old female was prescribed paclitaxel and carboplatin. These are the names of the two active ingredients. Paclitaxel and carboplatin was observed with acute pancreatitis in the at 14 days in the 5th cycle of the drug. She was also observed with nausea, but later it cured. So this is like a free text. Now you have the patient who is a 45-year-old female. So you know the age and gender of the patient. You will never get to know the actual identity, because that is something that is again quite complex. But at least in a literature scenario, if you look at the data sets like PubMed, there you will see such literature that on a particular patient was observed. So in these scenarios, you have to kind of identify these values out of the free text data. And it's not the case that the structure of the document is fixed. It depends on how that document is written. So typically, identifying such information points is one of the example of regulatory, where you have to report this information back to the authority. So this is something like variety of data, but this is business specific data. What about the formats of the data? So if you look at this example, quite confusing. You have synonyms, you have tables, you have scans, you have variety of different languages. Formats. Format is something which is always confusing. PDF documents, Word documents, Excel files, PPT files, too many a number of documents. So that is also confusing. So all these different kinds of data points add a lot of ambiguity and complexities. So if you look at negations, typically if you look at the tonality or the sentiment algorithms which are available in the market, that they look at the words, they look at the tonality, and they try to give you the negations. But in a pharma-like scenario, that may not be the case, because people will never say that your drug was better than the other drug. That will not be the case. So in this scenario, what you have to understand is that there are certain nuances when you try to look at the negations. Abbreviations, MS, it can be for multiple sclerosis, it can be for different things. So there are multiple different full forms of a certain abbreviation. So as you see in the example here, RA for right atrial, rheumatic arthritis, refractory anemia, right atrium, right arm, multiple different things. How to pick the correct one depends on the document or the input that you are processing. Co-referencing is a typical complex challenge in natural language processing, trying to relate the pronouns with the proper nouns, how the co-reference is, how the co-referencing flow is happening across the data. That is one of the key thing. Measurements, 5 mg, 10 mg, twice a day, thrice a day, complications, too many complications. Pictures, nowadays I think there is a lot of research which is happening on X-ray processing, or let's say the various different reports that you get. But here in this scenario, let's say for example you have patents. Okay, you have a data of patents. When you look at that patents data, you will have different combinations of molecular connections or molecular designs. So the example that you see here. So in this case, you have to interpret from this image. So typically this is not an image processing or a computer vision scenario, but the idea is that we try to implement such techniques of computer vision and try to figure out what is the potential context which is hidden within these diagrams or documents. Then of course you're all aware of ambiguities. Eating apple versus Apple as a company, very standard example. And finally, scans. Scans is something which is again confusing, because there are various ways in which a person may write or a human being may write. So scans always add a confusion or a complexity. Moreover, so the scan documents will have a lot of noise because of the scanning quality, because of the poor writing, can be anything. So all these different things that you see on the screen right now basically add extra complexity into the algorithm that you are writing. Because what is expected out of an algorithm is that the algorithm should work on a PDF. The same algorithm should work on a tabular data as well. The same algorithm should work on Word document as well. That's the understanding, because you cannot go ahead and tell your business colleagues or tell your business partners that okay, here is an algorithm for PDF, here is an algorithm for document. No, you have to have one document, one algorithm. Ideally, that is how you design a solution or design your algorithm. But you have to take into account all these different complexities or all these different data ambiguities. Interesting. Now, this third challenge that we see is very important. This third challenge corresponds to the regulatory concerns. When you are saying, or when you are going back to your regulatory authorities like FDA, EMA, or whatever, there might be a question that how this works. Okay, because you have a very sensitive data. You have a data about patient. You have data about the medical history of the patient. So that is extremely sensitive. And when you are processing that data, you have to kind of follow all different regulations. There is a regulation for GDPR. There is a regulation for HIPAA to handle the PII information. There are different regulations. Even I'm not aware of all the regulations because I'm not close to those regulations. But when we try to use that data, yes, definitely we are made aware of such regulations. But those regulations don't stop you. They just try to concern you that you are accessing a sensitive data. So because of that, there is a certain hesitation that okay, it's a sensitive data. I may not want to touch my existing process. Could be a case. So this third challenge could be the regulatory concerns which are observed due to the data sensitivity. And because of the 3 challenges that we just saw, the 4th challenge arises, that the data remains untouched. People are not taking risks because it's growing crazily. It's growing like anything. There is a variety. There are regulatory concerns, and because of that, you are not able to identify the actionable insights. Because in today's scenario, you have to make your data talk. When the data starts talking, you get to understand all these different advantages, drawbacks, improvements, etc., etc. So if you kind of try to wrap all these things into one particular keyword, it's called actionable insights from our perspective, from my perspective, that because of all these potential challenges, your data remains untouched to identify actionable insights. So ultimately, you kind of take a lot of time to extract information from certain documents or identify certain potential insights from medical inquiries, or it takes a significant time to process the clinical data. So all these different things. But if you look at the 3rd challenge, that is quite critical, because you have to ultimately report your information back to the regulatory authorities. But does this mean that we are not supposed to use NLP or text analytics or AI or blah 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 in pharma? No, not the case. There is a slow adoption. So in the next slide, let's try to understand what's the perspective that we think or that we see from a regulatory perspective. So let's see. So regulatory compliance and NLP. Is it really a fear factor? You really have to be scared a lot. Do you really think that everything is like denied if you want to do something good, or if you want to automate something which is a very highly compliant process? Let's see. Okay, so I have kind of divided the points into 4 different things. From my perspective, what I think is that regulatory compliance is a guided support, because you're handling a sensitive data, because it needs to be handled correctly, and because you have to ensure that you are maintaining it correctly, you're managing it, and you're storing it correctly. Okay, so let's look at these. So if you look at FDA, this stands for Food and Drug Authorities. EMA is European Medical Association. For European organizations, or for European pharma industries, there is a regulation called GDPR. Okay, General Data Protection Regulation, or General Data Privacy Regulation. This basically talks about how you can handle the PII data for European countries or European patients. Okay, if you are handling the data from Europe. Okay, so that is basically these are basically some of the high level regulations that we see. But is it really stopping us? No, it's a guided support. So regulations or regulatory bodies understand that there is a significant development is going on. Google is coming up with something, Facebook is coming up with something, IBM is coming up with something, every other organization. I'm just taking a few examples, but not just these, but every other organization. It can be a startup, or it can be a large organization like AWS, Microsoft, or anyone. They are doing significant developments. Along with them, even companies like ours, they are also going one step further, and they are setting up their own teams to kind of come up with research techniques, come up with R&Ds to kind of solve these problems. And that's where I come from. So we'll see that. So basically, as I said earlier, there are significant developments and successes in NLP which are observed for healthcare. Typically, I'm not going outside healthcare. So this is typically for healthcare. So there are significant development, there are significant successes which are observed, and they have proven to be efficient and effective. They are helpful. They are going to ease your task. They are going to give you the results in a record time. So that is going to improve the document review process if you look at it at a high level. Okay, so that is one that is observed and that has proven something. Now if you look at the second part, basically the second part talks about the workshops. Now you have to help them understand, right? They are also human beings. They also need to understand. So you have to help them understand. You have to kind of jointly organize workshops. These can be potential ways in which you can help them understand. Okay, these are not the hard and fast or the fixed set of guidelines, but these are like some of the potential guidelines that we may follow. So basically, we can arrange workshops to help them understand what are how we have solved a particular problem, how we are validating evidences, how we are improving the efficacy. Now you must have heard about a lot of different neural networks used in drug discoveries. I think there are a lot of research which is going on, but I think there are ways in which people are trying to use these techniques of natural language processing or deep learning this complex free text data to kind of understand how we can validate evidences, how we can improve efficacy, how we can improve safety. The example that I gave earlier. So if you want to process 100,000 documents, I'm just making it up. If you want to process 100,000 documents in one calendar year, if a human review happens, the human review would happen 4 times, because the safety is very critical for any organization, because it is directly related to patient life. So for that purpose, an organization would have a 4-step review. With NLP, you can try to eliminate 2 steps, where you know that, okay, this particular case or this particular document did not, it's not severe, and it can be processed directly. So those kind of techniques can go directly to your process document bucket. But if there are certain cases where you have seen potential severities related to death or anything, so those can be routed back to the human to double check, to ensure that machine has done correctly. And then finally, it can be about post-marketing documents. So there are certain documents which are observed. So those can also be processed through NLP. So we kind of help regulatory authorities understand how that is worked. Then what FDA suggests. So after understanding all this, they say, okay, no problem, go ahead, you can use it. But there are certain guidelines which we should follow. As per FDA and EMA standard guidelines which are published, they suggest that we should have the process transparent and having audit trail of each step. That is very critical. You should have a document which states that, okay, why the machine took this certain step, why this step happened, why this decision was taken. When you look at X-ray data, why the machine concluded that this patient may have tuberculosis. Okay, so this is something that FDA suggests, that you should have a very transparent process and provide audit trail of each document that you process. So what document you processed, when it was processed, did you make any change, did you incorporate any input from human, everything. So what they suggest is that you should have a transparent process and you should have the process audited. So anytime if someone comes and says that, okay, show me how the document was processed, you will have the evidence that this is how the document was processed and this is how the decision was taken. Because if you see this against a human is using his logic, his experience to take that decision. So that also gets documented. So here, the way machine is doing, this also needs to get documented. Finally, you have to collaborate and partner, because if you help them understand, if you kind of work hand in hand with them, then you can kind of bring in the advantages of NLP quite faster, because then you kind of understand their inputs, you kind of understand their feedback, and to ensure that the system that you're developing for processing the free text data or using the NLP or AI, it is in line with the guidelines which are offered or which are given by the regulatory bodies. So this will help leverage the advantages of NLP in driving value or giving the value back to the patients, as well as outcomes. You will get faster outcomes as you compare to you do it now manually. So from my perspective, I think if you kind of try to follow, or let's say use steps like these, then I think the solution or the algorithm that you develop will easily be adopted and acceptable as a part of solving certain problem in the pharma organization. Okay. So with this, I think we are at the halfway mark of the presentation. So I think now we understood what are the industry challenges, how we can work with regulatory bodies to kind of see how we can implement NLP across pharma organizations and how the market is going. Now for later part of the presentation, let's understand how we did it, how we solved it. What are the potential use cases that we solve using NLP and text analytics and AI. So just wanted to give you a quick background of our organization. So Merck is basically, so we call ourselves as a vibrant science and technology company. So basically this organization is a pharma organization which is into healthcare, life science and performance materials. Healthcare dealing with the drugs in the various therapeutic areas. Life science into different life sciences products or life science materials, and performance materials related to the liquid crystals which are used in OLED or LED display. So these are some of the different examples. But as an organization, we are one company who is focused on science as well as technology. So if you bring them together, then you're going to definitely generate that impact or that disruption that you want to bring in. So we are a 350-year-old organization. We have our setup in close to 66 countries, and basically we have set up in Bangalore as well. So our team of advanced analytics works out of Bangalore, and we kind of hire fresh talent as well as experienced people in the area of machine learning, artificial intelligence, to solve these problems which could impact the potential human life or potential human being or in any manner. So this is in a nutshell about our organization. It's of course a 350-year-old organization, founded in Darmstadt, close to Frankfurt in Germany, and we have it's like a old number, but we have close to 65,000 employees currently. We, as I said earlier, we are in various different fields. So we kind of help scientists to solve problems in the area of genome editing, food and beverage, biologics. These are like across solutions. Okay, these are not some of the solutions which uses AI. Some of them uses AI, but we use cutting edge technologies to solve certain problems in this area. We kind of try to, as I said earlier, we try to process medical data coming from oncology, immuno-oncology, neurology, fertility, etc. So this is basically, as I said, patients are at the center of our work. So we try to understand how we can deliver value back to the patient. So that is how we try to use technologies like even AI in our team to kind of solve some of the problems so that it generates an impact. And finally, we also, as I said earlier, we get into future mobilities like cars, various components which are required for part of car, or even smart technologies, as I said earlier, processors or LEDs or OLED displays. But this is in a nutshell about organization, how we use NLP. So from here, let me deep dive into what is our perspective and what is our vision in terms of adopting NLP across the businesses which we have within the Merck. So basically, if we look at the next few slides, you will try to understand how we look at the problem and how we try to solve these problems across different businesses. First of all, we see NLP as 4 different quadrants. So we see NLP as core, classic, complex, and advanced. This is our perspective. People may have different perspectives, but this is how we see. In core NLP, typically you will have the standards wherein you have lot of different libraries or packages which are available. If you're trying to, if you're a fan of Python, as world is right now, you can use SpaCy, you can use NLTK, you can use TextBlob. There are different libraries which are available to do core NLP. Okay, it kind of can handle sentence extraction, it can handle tokenization, it can handle stemming, lemmatization, part of switch tagging, till phrase extraction. We have seen a lot of libraries even which can do phrase extraction also. But if you look at classic NLP, there you need very specific things. Now there is a significant research even going with the classic NLP. So people try to use deep learning in the area of entity extraction. It can be dictionary based or it can be pattern based. Sentiment extraction to some extent, yes, people are trying to use sequence to sequence techniques or embedding techniques to kind of do the sentiment extraction on the free text data. Then general information extraction, person, organization, numbers, currency, etc., etc. There is a tremendous research which is going on using deep learning or using the classic NLP techniques also. And finally, the Euro 5 multilingual. So when you say EU5, the classic EU5 languages like French, Spanish, etc. So they are also classic NLP, because I think there is a lot of research which has happened apart from translation, where you can directly apply NLP on the actual data to do the analytics. So this is basically core and classic. This is basically like bare minimum. Okay. So fundamentally, if you look at this every organization will try to kind of first solve this problem, then get into the area of complex and advanced. So if you look at complex and advanced, basically there are 2 different components. If you look at industry standard, currently some of the industries may be doing it. Classify or clustering. Typical organizations have problems of text classification, text clustering, and we see it. As we speak, we are trying to solve certain problems in the area of clustering for our medical team. So basically we have lot of demands in the area of classification, clustering, etc. Along with that, we also have pattern-based relation extraction. So pattern-based relation extraction could be something like you have a certain set of patterns. You want to identify how the drug or a certain condition is related to each other. That can be purely based on pattern, and you can actually train any model. So if you want to use, or if you want to use very complicated deep learning model which is trained on top of BERT or BioBERT, it's possible. We have solved that. So apart from that, we have topic modeling also, which is quite straightforward. People try to use LDA, but people are trying to use various different deep learning techniques to come up with. And finally, non-EU5 and Chinese, Japanese, and Korean languages. Okay, so these are basically like sign languages, quite complicated. So there is a lot of research which is going on where either people want to use translation techniques, or people may want to use certain techniques related to a deep learning. Okay, so that's kind of like an industry standard. Complex is something where you have to do a lot of exploration or a lot of research. Relation extraction using ML or DL. So in relation extraction, it can be temporal relation also. So temporal relation is something like, let's say for example, you have a flow of information which says that at 14 days after 5th cycle, this is like a temporal information that after 14 days at 5th cycle of the drug. So that is a temporal information, versus a typical relation extraction may say that, okay, is the drug and medical condition causally related to each other? Causally, there is a relationship of drug causing a certain medical condition. Is that the case? These such complicated things can also be identified using the custom. You don't have any specific algorithms which are available in market, so you have to do a lot of customization and exploration. That is one of the first thing. Then disambiguation, words and disambiguation. There is a lot of research which is going on in the area of words and disambiguation. There is a lot of work that is going in, because it's quite complicated. You have to understand, you have to disambiguate a word in a different manner. As I showed the example earlier, relations, how the RT or RA is looked at in a different context is called disambiguation. Table extraction, there are a variety of different types of tables that we see in our day-to-day life, but still we want to extract such information out of it. So that is something related to table extraction. And finally, APAC multilingual. APAC multilingual can be related to Arabic, it can be related to Hindi, it can be related to our own Indian languages as well, or it can be related to other APAC languages as well. But these are some of the languages where you can do a lot of customizations and explorations apart from traditional translation, or apart from any typical techniques that you apply. This is how we foresee. At the bottom of the chart, as you see here, you have a lot of input data which is coming in. You have AE reports, product quality complaints, clinical trial, med affairs inquiries, med info documents, commercial, regulatory, anything. Okay, this is just a representative. It's not hard and fast. It can be anything. It's just a representative example of what the potential data could be. Now you have a data pipeline. So you have a custom configurable data pipeline, which is kind of trained by using the components from the 3 different phases that we have, or the structures that we have, for example, or the levels that we have. So first level is traditional data processing layer, for which you have a lot of different libraries, for which you have a lot of different tools. So you can do stop word removal, stemming, lemmatization, you have Porter stemmer, you have different lemma algorithms, even NLTK offers that, Spacey offers that. Then you have tokenization. You can do it using regular expression, you can do it using components like OpenNLP, Stanford Core NLP, lot of different things. POS tagging, again, different models available for POS tagging. It can be using hidden Markov models, it can be using context-free grammars, lot of different. So there is a humongous research which has happened in data pre-processing layer or data processing layer, that you have a OCR scanner. You can train your custom OCR using Tesseract, or you can use any out-of-the-box solutions which are offered by some of the enterprise organizations, or it can be PDF parsers using anything. So you have PDF box, you have different open source techniques as well, and then you have text parsers and dependency parsers also. So there are certain libraries, even Spacey or different libraries offer that. So this particular layer is quite straightforward to achieve. If you go to the value generation level, here you have to do some customizations based on the data. Okay, so as I said earlier, co-reference resolution, it can be very specific to certain drug versus medical conditions, or it can be specific to a certain value. It can be related to language identification, embeddings, morphological analyzer, identifying the person of the particular noun, etc. It can be EU multilingual, it can be NER. So there are a lot of different NER packages which are available. Nowadays, there are a lot of different tools which offer active learning for named entity recognition, for text classification, even for image classification. We have evaluated quite a lot of techniques where they actually use active learning in the backend to learn from the annotations that happen on the data. So that is something that you can also look at. So this is basically value generation layer. Once the data is passed through the value generation layer, now you get into business insights layer. This business insights layer will not be available publicly because this is very specific to business. This cannot be generalized. So there are different algorithms, there are different techniques which are very specific to certain businesses, like lexical chaining, concept linking, ranking or clustering, graph mining, summarization. Summarization as a whole, you will see that okay, there are a lot of techniques which do abstractive summarization also, but there are certain things where you have to do summarization specific to a certain document, which is with the certain business. So if you see certain techniques wherein you say that okay, there is a lot of research which is happening. Yes, there is a research, but that research is on a public data. So the embeddings or the trained models or the hyperparameters that you have, they are trained on the public data. They have never looked at a certain business data. So that's where we categorize this layer as business insights layer, because this needs customizations depending on business to business. And then finally, this is all enabled with the knowledge base that you will have dictionaries from WHO, you'll have dictionaries from every other source. You will have MEDRA, which is a standard for regulators. You have business specific dictionaries. There can be specifics because they may want to look at certain things, they may not want to look at certain things. And finally, when the insights are ready, there are different ways in which you can visualize it. You can use Kibana, which is a enterprise visualization for Elasticsearch, which is a NoSQL database. It's one of the interesting database that you can use for storing the insights from the pretext data. Then you have the custom visualizations which use CSS5, HTML3 kind of scenarios, or you have typical business intelligence tools like Tableau, Spotfire, ClickView, ClickSense, Power BI, anything. They're used for visualization. That depends on what business uses and what business is trained on. So this is basically kind of a model or a framework which we try to follow so that we can enable business with proper insights generated through various different NLP, text analytics, or deep learning components. And of course, this is secured, governed, and compliant. So we have a platform which is secured, which is governed by certain policies, and this is compliant to the regulations as well. Moving on, I just want to quickly touch upon how the deep learning scenario is in healthcare and how we use it. So I'll show you an example very quickly. But as you all know, deep learning is basically used for analysis and diagnosis of biomedical and healthcare problems, and it has received tremendous attention. So there are a lot of different packages, libraries which are now coming up to look at certain healthcare or biomedical related problems, and there are definitely a lot of achievements which has been seen. So you can see different algorithms or different techniques proposed by various universities or different organizations which can use images, use computer vision, and then actually predict a certain disease. Even as I was looking through the literature today, I saw an interesting blog where one of the industry or university, I'm not sure, has come up with a technique of computer vision where you can use X-rays to predict if you are COVID-19 positive or not. Something that's a lot of different research is going on. So you have currently algorithms in the area of medical diagnosis. Diagnosis is basically predicting a disease, saying whether the disease is there or not. Prognosis, proactively predicting whether in future you will have a certain disease or not, or it can be medical devices, treatment, and various different applications. These applications are capable of generating large volumes of data. So these applications of medical diagnosis generate huge amount of image, sound, text, graph, and signals. It's quite huge. And currently, if I pick a subset of, let's say, text, or if sound, let's say sound treating as a text, there are a lot of techniques which are available, like BERT. BERT is basically trained on Wikipedia. It's basically bidirectional encoder receiver technique. Okay. If you want to look at a very specific biomedical related BERT, there is a BERT for BioBERT, which is looking at PubMed data to kind of do the same thing, but trained specifically on biomedical data. If you want to look at clinical data, there is a technique called clinical BERT. Okay, so there are various versions of BERT which are very specific to the pharma industries, and along with that, there are packages like Med7. There is an interesting research, or there is an interesting solution which is offered by Spark NLP in the area of classification and tech extraction and various different tasks. So there is a tremendous explosion in deep learning, but why still there is a lack of adoption for deep learning even on text? There is a tremendous explosion definitely happened on images. There is a lot of different things, but why still people are not seeing using these techniques? Why people are still hesitant? Okay, this is based on my experience. So there are some points. Neural networks are essentially a black box. Nobody, as I said earlier, FDA or any regulatory body may say that, tell me how this decision was taken. When you feed the data into the neural network, and when you do the hyperparameter tuning, when you decide the learning rate, when you decide number of epochs, when you decide number of passes, etc., everything. But what really happens inside neural network, which takes a decision, is still not known. People can't say with a guarantee that, okay, this is the reason with which neural network took this decision. Because when you are training a neural network algorithm, you can't just take a biased opinion. You have to take opinions from a group of people. That's why there is a concept of explainable AI now. You have to have explainability, why this decision was taken. So that is something where a lot of organizations are getting into area of explainable AI, that why this decision was taken. That is one part. You have lots and lots of data availability, but the data is always concised within specific boundaries, because that is very sensitive data. As I said, we have a lot of data, but whatever the research that has happened, that happened on public data, and that may not be directly applicable on the industrial data. So you have to do lot of training. In fact, in the worst case, you might have to retrain the entire algorithm or entire model again on your data, because that may be throwing a lot of irrelevant results. Then of course, hyperparameter optimization. You are not sure which hyperparameters would work best on your technique which you want to use neural nets. Of course, and finally, you need a very pharma domain specific knowledge base or embeddings, okay, or for applying neural nets on pharma data, which is lacking right now. The embeddings that you have are on the public data. So you need very specific knowledge base or embeddings which can help you get more accurate results on the pharma text data, apart from the PubMed or the open source database that you have. And currently, as I see, there are a lot of use cases. I mean, on a daily basis, I or our team, I mean, me and my team members or my colleagues, we try to evaluate a lot of different libraries. But when we look at certain libraries, they are either in the area of classification, NER, or translation. We need to go beyond these. Okay, there are different business problems within pharma or within either businesses also that are beyond these. So we have to go one step ahead and say that, okay, I know how the classification works. Let me see how this model would work on concept linking, or let's say on a different thing. So every task is not a classification task when it comes to text. Every task is not an NER task. Okay, there are more complex problems in pharma which we should start looking at, start researching upon. And then finally, I think there is a lot of explosion on deep learning on images like computer vision. So we need to expand that research on textual data as well. There are techniques nowadays coming with GANs, generative adversarial networks, active learning. So we need that research. So now we need to focus our all strengths and our research strength on the textual data in medical, so that we can bring in more and more enhancements so that it can improve the patient life. Let me just quickly walk through, because I think we are running out of time. So let me just quickly walk you through the use cases that we have. So we have the identification of medicinal products. This is the regulation that has been brought in by the EMA. So this is getting implemented. So this is our solution that we developed, where from a free text PDF document or Word document, you can identify all the medicinal details, like name of the drug or active ingredient, the dosage information, everything. So everything can be identified through this solution. Then we have the solution in the area of medical information, where we try to process the medical inquiries data and try to visualize insights so that they can be actionable. So it can be categories, it can be sentiments, it can be anything. Then we have the application in the patient safety, where we can look at processing the free text data, the one that you see in the screen right now, and trying to identify patient, product, event seriousness, and various different information extraction tasks. So this is something which is related to information extraction. This is something which is related to corporate responsibility. So basically you have a free text data which is captured by various different NGOs and various different enterprise organizations. So how you can apply NLP and identify certain key phrases or techniques which can help you get some trends from the particular data. This is related to COVID-19, where our team basically developed a solution, and that's still kind of getting improved, which uses deep learning, text analytics, NLP, and search in the backend to retrieve relevant literatures from the pool of 65,000-70,000 literatures specific to COVID-19 using a free text question or a free text query. So that's the beauty that we have used. So here also you will see we have used NLP or text analytics for this particular application. I think I have last 2 slides, so I'll quickly wrap up. So this is something quite important. So this is something that how you can achieve that adoption roadmap. So you start small. So the challenge is that if you go and pitch your idea to a certain business and you say that, okay, I'll use deep learning, I'll use AI, and I'll automate everything, they'll get scared because they don't know what's happening inside. So instead of that, let's just start small. Start small, take a subset of a problem, build your core engine, and then start with the stages where you ultimately reach at a point where now you have touchless system which is going to do everything. But don't start directly with the actual problem, saying that, okay, I'll use everything and I'll automate everything. That will not be good. So from my perspective, if you want to really expand your solution or expand your algorithm, start small, try to solve a subset of problem, build your core engine, and try to train on top of it. So start with information management, so that you will have reports or you will have information or analytics specifically for certain team. Then you prioritize based on specific business function, who needs what. Then of course next best action, a recommendation engine or anything, and then finally automated actions using chat bots or anything. But this is how you should do it in pharma if you want to enable this adoption roadmap. And finally, as a closing point, I would urge all of you, or I would request all of you to keep an eye on NLP. Okay? There's an adoption. There's a slow adoption happening. Continuous refinements and improvements are taking place in the algorithms. Evolution is going on. People are trying to follow methodologies of how humans learn, evolve, and react to answer or to newer situation. That is evolution. Artificial intelligence leveraging a force, as we said, concepts of deep learning, genetic algorithms, active learnings to improve the accuracy, and of course regulation, proactively evaluating NLP to determine how it can be adopted and deployed by companies. So this is in a nutshell that you have to keep an eye on NLP. There is a tremendous research happening in public. Now we have to focus on solving some of these complex problems so that we kind of enhance the horizon of NLP and ultimately impact the human life. So with this, I'd like to conclude my presentation, and yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks, Prathamesh. So we have just 2 more minutes before we end this presentation. It's 3:30. So let's have 1 or 2 questions before we end this. So Ajay is asking you one question, that which NLP engine do you use for training?
So as I said, we don't have very specific NLP engines like Stanford, Spacey, or anything. We have custom set of different algorithms. Like temporal NLU, we have different techniques. For concept linking, we have different techniques. So we don't use a specific NLP engine. We don't use that. We try to use these libraries like Spacey, NLTK, and we try to build on top of them. So the custom algorithms which you saw in value generation or even in the business insights layer, they are more specific to what we do for businesses. They don't come from a engine.
Sure. Thanks, Prathamesh. The next question is, what is the future of NLP API as SaaS offering?
Certainly, I think that's a very good question. So even as our team, we are evaluating that. So we want to get into a stage where we want to make citizen data scientists. I mean, that's the term that we use within our organization, that we want to give the opportunity to business users to actually play around with these different algorithms, and then if they see certain nuances, then we come into picture where we retrain them or we kind of enhance the algorithms. But yes, certainly once the research progresses in the area of NLP, the next step for this is basically using NLP as a service or as an API as a service, where you kind of make these business users more educated about these techniques.
Thanks, Prathamesh. Let's have Bharati's question as the last one. She's asking, you spoke about there are a lot of challenges beyond the standard classification or regression problems. Can you throw light on few of those problems?
So if I take example of classification, if you look at the classification algorithms for, let's say, on a test on a public data, so most of the classification techniques like BERT or BioBERT, they are trained on open source data. If you look at BERT, that is trained on that's trained on Wikipedia data, or if you look at BioBERT, that is trained on PubMed data. But when you try to implement these algorithms in the actual business domain, they tend to fail because of the fact that the way the language is written, the words that are used, they will vary completely. So that's why there are such nuances which kind of gives you poor accuracy. So when you look at certain embeddings, you cannot use Wikipedia trained embeddings or public domain embeddings on the data of, let's say, safety, because the data is altogether different. So these nuances can be tackled only when you kind of customize them in the domain specific backgrounds for businesses.
All right. Thank you so much, Prathamesh, for this amazing presentation and throwing light on this amazing topic. Thank you so much. And for all the audience, for the upcoming sessions for the month of July, please visit nascom.in/events for more information and for registration. And thank you, Prathamesh, for your time and efforts for this great presentation.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we may not be able to cover the questions due to time constraint, but feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or maybe reach out to me, and I'll be happy to answer. And thank you, Ankita and NASSCOM team, for this opportunity to share my thoughts. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thanks, Prathamesh. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Please take care. Bye.